This movie only features around 12 minutes of Bruce Lee footage. The rest is composed of body doubles and awkward archive clips from previous films. The results are more interesting to discuss than to actually watch, so let's dive in to Game of Death. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
Out of respect for the actors in this movie, I will not be quoting this movie.
And hopefully we don't have to use the backup audio because I had you very down low for that first line dialogue. So
sorry, let me just dub it over after the fact. Out of respect for this movie, I will not be quoting the people in this movie.
Like, I could pick that apart and say, why wouldn't I just use the second take? But that's...
Hush.
Why
too much editing.
Oh yeah, because taking the audio from the second one but putting it over the first one, it makes way more sense.
Yep.
Way less work. Welcome, this is a movie podcast, everyone. We're finishing off Bruce Lee season here on the Collector's Cut. We've done 4 previous films, his 4 biggest films, and we have the weird oddity to wrap things up that is Game of Death from 1978. Now, originally, of course, this was meant to be coming out much, much earlier than that. It was meant to come out in 1973. Production was paused after some filming because the opportunity to do Enter the Dragon came up, and Bruce Lee did that instead. And before they get back to making this, in fact, before Enter the Dragon, as we mentioned on the Enter the Dragon review, before that even technically came out in theaters, he was already gone. He was already passed away. So, yeah, they only had X amount of footage of that movie shot, and Golden Harvest sometime later decided to try and use some of it in a movie. Now, this is a very interesting piece of movie history. Whether or not it makes for a good movie is something, of course, we'll discuss in a minute. But there's definitely some interesting quirks and lots of talking points to have. Even just on the ethics of what they did here. It's something that's worth talking about, and there's a couple of specific things that do feel like dodgy choices. And there's one thing in particular that's not their fault, that has aged terribly because of something that happened to Bruce Lee's son. So I could not believe that scene. I was not prepared for...
The moment they started saying, like, here's what's going to happen, I'm like, no, movie, stop now. You don't know what's going to happen, but a time traveler, like, this is how I know time travel's never going to be possible, because this scene is still in this movie. Someone would have gone back and have erased that.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in this movie you can blame them for. You can't blame them for this one. It's just complete unfortunate, whatever. Whatever you want to call it. Coincidence doesn't even feel like the right word. So... yeah, well, we'll get into everything. We'll start spoiler-free for the movie, of course, as we always do. If you're enjoying the show, please do hit the like button. If you're on YouTube, it helps us out a bunch. And, of course, you can get more bonus content and help support us over at Patreon, but I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So, the premise of this movie... Now, this is usually quite a simple part of the show. I give you a premise of the movie. With this movie... there's 2 premises. There's the original premise, and then there's what they turned it into when they had to sort of build a new movie around the footage they already had. Yes. And what's so sad about Game of Death as a premise is that the original premise sounds really good. And it's like so influential despite the fact that it never got made. It was basically boiling down to Bruce Lee has to fight his way up a tower full of bad guys to get to the boss and then like steal the artifact or whatever the MacGuffin of the movie was. But that's what it was. Simple, basic premise was he has to work his way up like a video game. And I compare it to video games now. They wouldn't have done that at the time. In 1972, when they were first, cracking the script to this, they wouldn't have compared it to that because they didn't exist yet. Oh, sorry. Pong maybe existed, but that's a bit different.
Do you not recall the 10 different bosses of Pong that this movie clearly ripped off of?
Yes, ping, pang, pang.
You're going to run out quick.
No, you can do double vowels, so pung.
Oh, pung.
Ping. Piang. Okay, I'm out.
Yeah.
I need to go.
But yeah, no, you're right, because it is this movie is what the video games took from. Like the boss waves, the like boss rush mode, that's what this is. And it just codified it before anything else. Again, in the scripting phase. By the time you hit the movie that was actually made, not so much.
Yeah, well, that's the sad part, is that if the movie had been made as planned, if Bruce Lee was able to go back and finish the movie as was intended, because he was directing it, he wrote and directed what the original version was, but obviously they only made so much of it. It was actually the director of Enter the Dragon who was brought in to kind of try and salvage something out of, you know, what they had. So we have this weird Frankenstein creation of a movie that has about 12 minutes of real Bruce Lee footage that was shot. And bizarrely, with his most iconic look, somehow the yellow tracksuit with the black stripe is from this movie.
Yep.
But for the rest of the movie, we have stand-ins. So even though Bruce Lee's top billed, the majority of the time his character is around, it's actually someone else. However, occasionally there's like close-ups of previous movies which don't match the rest of the scene, just so we can have like a close-up of Bruce Lee reacting to something. There's one very notorious moment early on where they literally kind of like just cut out a photo of him and like sort of put it on a mirror while the character's talking, and it's like there's kind of a weird charm to it, because like this is basically what they try and do now with CG to bring dead actors back to life, but this was the 1978 version of like we're just going to have like a cardboard cutout and we're just going to dub over it and hope for the best.
It's like literally a cheaper version of let's try to do like a good prosthetic makeup job. It's just, okay, we're going to literally print out a picture and just like dangle it in front of the camera. And that's where we're at here.
Which gets me to kind of like my opinion, before we talk about the quality of how much it works or whatever, right? We'll get into the general impressions.
Okay.
But for me, this movie falls into the class of it's not really a movie. In the same way that I think of Richard Donner's cut of Superman 2. It's an interesting thing to watch if you're a fan of those movies and see, oh, what could have been, but it's not a finished film. It uses screen test footage. There's stuff that's missing. They had to reuse some shots from Superman 1 to just fill it in. It's not a complete film. It's an interesting artifact. It's like a bonus feature. So you get the Blu-ray box set or whatever. It's a cool extra. And it's an interesting way to present, oh, hey, we've got like these 3 fight scenes with Bruce Lee. We've built some sort of loose plot to build up to it so that there's some context for it, rather than just giving you 12 minutes of fight scenes with nothing around it.
Right.
Now, does that make this movie good? Does it make it right? Not really, but...
Yeah. I mean, for my initial impressions here, a lot of what I want to talk about is the ethical aspect of it, but I'll hold off and just stick to quality of the movie for now. This movie felt like kind of like an improv bit or some sort of writing project where it was, here is the point you need to get to. Here is what we have, because most of the 12 minutes are in the very, very back of this movie. It is at the climax entirely.
Which, but in a weird way, kind of works to its benefit, because at a certain point, you're like, oh, I can't wait for the real Bruce Lee stuff. Where are we getting to it? You're rubbing your hands together, just waiting for real Bruce Lee to show up.
I guarantee you that if the 11 minutes of footage they had was the exposition, like first scenes, it never would have come out. They would have been like, we don't have any fight scenes. We're not even going to bother. But yeah, no, it's a writing project of here's the endpoint you need to get to, figure out how. Like you have to get him in A, the specific outfit, B, you have to introduce these villains in a way, and C, you have to then have an ending after the fact, because we didn't have that either. But then, because of those restrictions, you also have to write it in a way where you have to explain why he doesn't look the same for a lot of the movie, and yet still simultaneously use him in a way that he's supposed to look the same. And like, it just is a snowball effect where you have problem after problem introduced by them trying to solve the problems of, we don't have our lead actor. And like you said, by the end of it, it doesn't end up being a movie. It ends up being a proof of concept of, technically we could make something happen, but ultimately it doesn't come across as a finished product.
Yeah, the movie goes out of its way to repeatedly have the stand-ins wearing sunglasses or disguises at various points, or have the face bandaged up, or just have a lot of shadows like hitting their face to try and hide the fact that it's not really Bruce Lee. And I think what's really sticks out to me when I was watching this is when the moment comes where you get to Bruce Lee and he's in his fight scenes, the second you see him move, I'm like, that's Bruce Lee. And it just highlights how, and no disrespect to the Sadat guy who they had playing Bruce Lee before.
There were three of them actually, but yes.
Yeah, well, I think there was like one main. There was one who was doing like the aerobatics, and then I don't know what the third one was specifically doing, but like I think they all filled different like parts of the role.
Right.
But when Bruce Lee shows up and he starts moving, he grins, and then just the way he moves his feet a little bit as he's like sort of moving side to side, I'm like, every other fight scene in this movie before this point was dull and uninspiring, and immediately as soon as Bruce Lee's on screen, there's this energy to it. There's this sense of style, of character, of personality. It all it does is highlight his absence up until this point.
Also, I mean, there's only so much you can get around it, but I don't know who this movie was made for, because in some ways it feels like the only people who are really going to get the most out of this are people who really enjoy Bruce Lee. People who, even for those just 11 minutes, that's what they come to see. They really want to see, his final fights and whatnot. But on the backside of that, there is so much footage used from previous movies in the first 10 minutes of this, and especially the Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee fight that you and I complimented so much is used to open this up. And that's actual Bruce Lee. So when they show that to start with and then pivot over to our new guy, it's an immediate downgrade. It is we start high, we immediately go low, and we don't get high again back until the very, very end of the movie. Yeah,
I will say it is a little. I felt the choice was inspired though, because they show a lot of this fight as the opening titles are playing from the end of Way of the Dragon. And then it turns out our character that Bruce Lee was playing, well, I mean, not originally, of course, but like in this version of the story that they've now, concocted, is that the character of Billy Lowe, right, who's Bruce Lee's character, he's a martial arts actor like Bruce Lee, and at the end of the fight from Way of the Dragon, you see like the camera operators and stuff, and it's like cut, and it's like, oh, he was meant to have been filming this scene, because I was wondering why Chuck Norris was in the opening titles, and it's really just because of all this. I mean, maybe there was one or two like new shots of him at the end, like walking away or something, but I don't think I noticed any.
There wasn't. He apparently Chuck Norris threatened to sue because his name was used in this movie after the fact. So there's a lot of people in this movie that they were around for the initial filming bit for that 11 minutes, and they get very top billing in this movie. They are 100% up there, but they absolutely did not want to return once Bruce was gone because it just was deemed as a little bit skeevy.
Yeah, because I was noticing that there was only one of the three characters that he fights that I really noticed popping up in the movie beforehand in any kind of meaningful way. Otherwise, it just kind of felt like random new mini bosses that he had to fight. But I mean, obviously there's some things here. One, doing this at all and doing all this trickery. I mean, at least the audience is obviously aware that it's happening. Like, I don't think you could even market this or talk about it without saying, yeah, we're kind of pulling all these tricks to try and basically just present this material with some plot building up to it. But clearly there's a lot of, in some level, I mean, I don't know how much they tried to trick the audience into thinking it was going to be a full Bruce Lee movie at the time. I have to imagine, at least if this came out in the modern day, that it would be like, hey, this is kind of a tribute, and you get some new footage at the end, but it's mostly going to be a tribute actor for 80-90%.
I'm sure that the people who were really into it knew what it was going into it, because they were aware of, he filmed barely any of this and then died very early on. But I have to imagine that there has been at least one advertisement for this that was the final film from Bruce Lee, and they just kind of hide the asterisks as much as they can.
Yeah, and you asked a little bit ago who this is for. I'll tell you who this was for. This is for Golden Harvest. That's who this is for.
That's true.
Because they made
back
money.
Their money. Yeah.
Yes, they made some money from this. That's what this was for. Interesting look at the cast. Apparently, a very young Tony Leung's in this, who we saw in Chungking Express. But he's an actor, that I've seen in a bunch of things from 90s, 2000s, and so on. But I didn't notice him because obviously he's much younger in this, but he's there somewhere.
I was going to say, he plays David. I don't even remember a character named David. I didn't think I would hear that.
Yes, you think you would hear that. Your brain just goes, what was that? Someone said my name.
Someone said, huh? What? David? Where?
Notably, Colleen Camp's in this, who is obviously in the new footage. And we saw her on this show on Die Hard with a Vengeance. I also know her mainly from Clue. And she's also got a small role in Apocalypse Now. So it's kind of funny, actually, just because how spread out those movies are. That's like covering 3 decades of time. But she's the love interest in this movie. So, yeah.
I mean, she did a fine enough job, but it is like she exists solely in the new footage.
Yes.
So it kind of feels like, all right, she's here because we need to have this romantic interest subplot, but ultimately it can't matter that much. And by the end, it really doesn't.
Oh, no, of course. And the main villains are new as well. They're not in the original footage either. Yes. So all of the driving force of the plot is completely new fabricated stuff. And that's the stuff that feels kind of like, arguably the most skeevy thing the movie does.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're going to say.
Yeah, so, I mean, I won't say the context because it's maybe spoilers, but there is real footage from Bruce Lee's funeral used in this movie. I'm not sure how much of the shots of the crowd were real, but there was one shot looking at the coffin when it's open, and you see the dead body of Bruce Lee in this movie. Yeah, like, anything else you want to argue in this, like, in favor of the movie being, well, it's just a movie, who cares? I'm almost willing to let you pass with any of it. This particular detail, though, putting in an actual footage of his real dead body, not so much. This is a line. This is a line that was crossed, and there's no defending this.
I'm not entirely sure that it is his real dead body. I'm willing to believe it, and I'm about 80% sure. But they do have a prop later on that shows like a similar-esque thing that clearly is not his real dead body. So maybe that was just a like inserted shot of that later on. But even then, even without that, the fact that you are using an actual real man's funeral as his character in the thing, and you have the cojones to make it part of like the ongoing plot. Like, it's not even like a big ending bit where it's like we're paying tribute to this actor. It's like, no, this is a middly bit. This is a tiny little bit in the middle, and we're just kind of using it as, why not? We had the access to the footage.
Yeah, no, I think I read it was because
if it was, then so be it. But like,
I think it was just a shot of his real body.
I'm hoping that somebody anywhere up the chain thought, "Hey guys, that's a bad idea."
Yeah, I think it is because the one you see later on that's supposed to be fake does look fake.
That's true.
And then the one that you see there isn't. And I'm pretty sure I did read that one of the controversies of this movie is simply that they used footage of his funeral and showed the body.
I mean, I know they used his funeral. If it's the actual body, then yeah, that's extra bad. So like I said, 80%. I'm willing to agree with you there. That 20% is me just trying to have hope in humanity, trying to say that we're not that greedy where we're going to cash in on an actual dead body.
And I'm not someone who even likes the idea of an open casket, and I don't want to see dead bodies ever, really. So I don't really appreciate a movie showing me a real dead body. Like, piss off.
It's like a strange little middle ground to like, we're almost at a snuff film. Like, we're not actually, but we are showing the dead body, and this actor was in the movie beforehand, so Yeah.
So no, it's So I mean, a lot of it leaves a bad taste in your mouth, which is why it's really sad to say that those 11-12 minutes of real footage is actually really good.
It is. I have my critiques with it, but when it comes down to the actual fighting and the choreography of the scenes, it just works. Like, it's very well done. It's a great fight sequence. It's a pity we didn't get the full version of it, you know?
For sure. Yeah, and we should also note down, there is like a Game of Death 2 that uses some other little snippets of footage that they didn't use for this one. How they concocted that, I don't know. But that came later. It's even more like, what the hell is this?
From what I read, the Game of Death 2 was using cut footage from Enter the Dragon.
Oh, really? Okay.
And then they just kind of like pivot off to another protagonist halfway through.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, this felt like the natural end point of this season.
Absolutely.
So I think this was the right choice to do this one. You know, as much as you could argue it's not really a Bruce Lee movie through and through, it absolutely is the end of the story of Bruce Lee's career. Whether you like it or not, this is the final big notation of,
Yeah.
oh, other than just, of course, what happened to his son, which is eerily similar to, forgetting the scene in this that gets eerily close to what actually happened to his son. Just the idea that his son, who was an actor, passed away before the movie that was about to make him like a superstar came out. Like, he died before it came, it was an on-set accident. It was right, and in that case, they just happened to have shot the vast majority of the movie already, so they only needed to do a couple of little stand-ins or something for a couple of scenes, but all of the major scenes had been done. So, The Crow came out, as a full-formed, finished movie, but it became this kind of eerie idea of history repeating itself. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say about that side of stuff, but
the only other thing I want to bring up specifically about Game of Death's release, like we said, there's an original scripted version, and then there's this version. There apparently in the past 5 or so years were 2 other versions that were basically just trying to be more faithful. The first one was in 2019 called Game of Death Redux, which apparently does not use any of the like new footage. It was all the original production stuff, and like it doesn't really have much of a plot to it, but it was released in the Criterion Collection's Blu-ray box set. And then they also had a release in 2023, which is part of a larger documentary, and it's literally just they filmed 2 hours of footage collectively of Bruce Lee before he ended up passing for this movie, and all of that is in there. Just all of the footage is available, and they call it the final Game of Death.
Okay, those both sound like extras. They both sound like cool, interesting presentations of whatever was shot. Because I assume that more stuff was shot. It's just simply that none of it could work with the new plot or make sense. Like, it was only really the fight scenes they could throw in and sort of build other things around to make it function.
Right.
So it's a shame. But hey, it's just one of these kind of pop culture stories of the weird history of Hollywood or whatever.
Yep.
It's not even Hollywood, well, kind of, because it's not. This isn't an American movie originally, so it kind of feels like one, because it's a lot of the new footage is mostly like white actors, but like originally I assume it was going to be mostly Chinese actors.
Yeah, probably. It based off of the initial description of it. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is one of the mini bosses. Obviously, he was going to be just there as a celebrity actor, but
he is a very tall man. See, when he stood up next to Bruce Lee, I was like, Jesus Christ, this guy's like 7.5 feet.
Yeah, probably. But no, it's absolutely it almost goes back to the video game idea, where it is like, you have a boss that's just towering over you, and how do you take it down?
Yeah. So if you are concerned about spoilers for the plot, this is where I'll say spoiler warning. Although, to be honest, this is the sort of one where you may be better off just listening to us rather than watching it. To be honest,
listen to us until the moment we say, and then Bruce Lee officially enters, and then go watch that bit.
Yeah, and I imagine those scenes are just on YouTube on their own.
Oh yeah,
I'd be shocked if they aren't.
I typed in, because I rent all my movies through YouTube. It's one of the most reliable ways to get it for me, and I typed in Game of Death, and the top result was the 11 minutes that were in the movie. And then the second result was rent the whole movie.
That's probably the order they should be in, and the results, if I'm honest. So, yes. So, the new premise, where he is an actor, and the opening titles, by the way, they basically, and I thought this was fine for the opening titles, because I knew going in they were going to reuse some shots and stuff. But I think having kind of like a greatest hits of his previous movies as the opening titles did make, that was fine to me. I thought, this is a nice little celebration of Bruce Lee. This is cool, whatever,
Yeah, I like they did a whole motif of like roulette and dice and cards and stuff like that to really lead into this idea of gambling and the game of death.
They've come a long way. First of all, I don't think that, now you say that, it's not like the idea of games of death really comes up in the plot. Like, it's not really a part of the story, but it did make me think, though, they've come a long way from that one JPEG of Bruce Lee like jumping across the screen from Big Boss. Yeah,
absolutely. As it's going through, I'm like, okay, no, it feels like this is trying to be like on the level of like a James Bond intro. Like it's getting to that same sort of point there, and I think it does a good job of being an interesting opening. But I also did recognize that as they're going through the end featuring actors, like
Yeah.
it was very clear for the people that we were using the archive footage for, especially Chuck Norris, he was not going to be showing up in this movie because I saw that shot. It was in the previous movie.
Yeah. No, yeah, there's that. Yeah, and do that thing where they actually show like, little circles of the people, like a TV show almost, but like, hey, and this person's in it, and this person's in it, and we're going to see them all. So that's all fine. But so, like we
It's
said,
the Full House theme song. It's weird.
they're playing the end of Way of the Dragon, and then it's like, oh, they were just shooting this scene, and Billy, and immediately there's this close up of a real shot of Bruce Lee from that movie, that's meant to be after the VL cut. But all of a sudden, he looks like he's outside for for this one shot, right? It's like, they've cropped in so tight. So all these shots of Bruce you get with the face close-ups are especially close up because in some cases they've even cropped them a bit to try and hide where he was when he was reacting to something.
It almost works with how many of the very shifty eye shots are across all the previous movies. Like they make good use of it, but this one in particular really took me for a loop because they show it's filmed on a set. Like they are filming on a set here, but then like you said, that outside shot looks very outside. So it's almost like they're breaking the fourth wall in their own continuity here.
Yeah, so he's making a movie and there's a dodgy guy, this sort of the, what do they call him? The sort of the vice boss of like the syndicate.
Yeah, he's like the lieutenant, I would say.
He's the guy because the old man's in charge. We see him later on. Is this really old dude? But this guy comes around with the cane, so we'll call him Kane, right? And
I'll see if I can get his actual name, but yeah, that's fair.
Well, I was saying that because there's a guy who always has a matchstick in his mouth, and they did just call him Match, I think.
Sticks.
Or they call him Sticks. But I knew it was just like Kane. They literally just call him what I'm noticing about him.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to call him Kane, right?
I think his name is Steiner, but we can go with Kane. Go for it.
Really?
Yeah. I know. I read it too, and I'm like, that doesn't sound familiar, but that's what he's credited as.
Anyway, Kane is basically here to talk to Billy. And this is where we get the really awful mirror shot with the cutout Bruce Lee.
This feels to me like one of the first things they shot in production, and they were like just testing out different methods, and they quickly realized, okay, we're not doing that again.
Yes, we're embarrassed by that. Unfortunately, it's in the first couple of minutes of the movie, so it leaves it's a really bad first impression. We'll just say that. But he's here to squeeze him. So I watched half an hour of this movie last night because this was kind of we were recording on an extra day. It was kind of a last minute notice, and you said, hey, let's record tomorrow. And I was like, sure. And to try and make my life a bit easier, I thought I'll try and watch some of it tonight and get, save some time. And I got through maybe 35 minutes, maybe 40. And when I came back to watch the rest of it today, I had completely forgotten anything that the bad guys, do. And it wasn't until they mentioned it a little bit later, because there's a meeting scene quite soon, basically when Kane's upset that Bruce Lee slapped him and said, no, piss off. So they're a crime syndicate, but they also own a giant record label, which is also where Bruce Lee's girlfriend is making music, but they also run martial arts tournaments, which they rig for betting with other rich people. And this was the stuff that I'd forgotten, because when I started watching the rest of it today, and eventually they mentioned, oh yeah, the fighter's here, and I'm like, fighter? What's the fighter for? And I'm like, oh yeah, they mentioned a tournament in one scene like half an hour ago.
I'll be honest, you watched it in bits, and it would make sense that you didn't follow exactly what the syndicate's plans were and what they had. I watched it all in one go. I still don't know what the syndicate's plans were. I know they're trying to intimidate Bruce Lee. I get that, but it's kind of this vague sort of, oh, you got to listen to us and do what we say. But they never really go into what he has to do. It's just this vague, go with the flow, and we'll get to the details eventually.
Yeah, I mean, the implication, I think, is that, oh, well, if they make you successful, they own you, and there's bad things because of that. But they never actually show us why just, working for them and making money. Because it's not like they're asking him to do anything illegal. They just want to, be his agent, effectively. So, if they're getting him movie roles and he's successful and he's making his fair share of money, then what's the problem exactly?
Yeah, we get one bit. One of his friends is a newspaper man, self-described. And the newspaper man literally describes the problem. He says, yeah, at first it's great. They give you money when you need it. They book you gigs. Everything's fine. But then later, well, that's when the problems start. But then he doesn't elaborate.
Yeah,
he doesn't say what the problems are.
Like, are you going to, like, are they going to ask you to, like, smuggle for them? Are they going to make you, have you kill someone? Yeah, like, what are they going to ask him to do? They never, ever even hint her. And every time we cut back to the bad guys, they're just like, oh, so how'd your conversation with Billy go? Oh, not good. He's being tough. Well, we'll scare him one more time. All right, we'll scare him one more time. Okay, fine.
We'll do that like 4 more times.
We'll do that 4 times for the first 40 minutes of the movie, and then we'll finally just decide to kill him. And that's how repetitive the first 40 minutes are. It's basically just, oh, we're going to ride up and like try and this is the other weird thing about this, and this is the new footage, is they kind of make his character like, he's good at fighting, but he kind of gets like beat multiple times in the first like 40 minutes, which I found a little bit strange. Not to say that you can't have Bruce Lee be beat if he's overwhelmed or whatever, but it kind of felt like there were always these little cheap like wins that just kind of left them, and it was always kind of like, aha, yeah, we'll come back and beat you up again kind of thing. I don't know, it's all a bit.
That strikes me as the sort of way where they didn't want to, I guess, underplay or like downsize how menacing the villains actually are. So they try to say like, oh no, look, they're super menacing because they can beat them up. But that's ignoring the fact that that's not what makes the other Bruce Lee movies work. Like, Bruce Lee should always be in control of these things. The opponents just have scale. They have numbers on their sides. That's what makes them intimidating. This idea that he's able to get wiped so easily is just like, all right, well, I guess he's a good fighter. You're telling me he's a good fighter, but you're not showing me he's a good fighter.
Yeah, because honestly, I lost count of the number of scenes where Kane talks to the crime boss, and the crime boss is just so nonchalant about, oh, how's that Billy thing going? Oh, well, I guess we'll have to squeeze him again. Ha ha ha, aren't we evil? Like, that's basically a scene we get like 4 times in this movie, until eventually, like, well, he's still not calling, he's still not like giving in. I guess time to kill him.
After the second time, they say, yeah, here's the number. You can call us. We'll be expecting your number, like, to call us. And he doesn't, obviously. He doesn't want any part of them. So they say, okay, let's go scare him again. And they go, they beat him up, and they have a little fight scene. And then they go back to their place, and we have another one of those scenes where he's like, he still hasn't called. You still need it? I'm sorry, I thought we resolved all that when you went to beat the crap out of him. You're still waiting for, what are you, a 16-year-old girl?
Yeah, and they've established, obviously, at this point as well, that he's dating this singer played by Colleen Camp, and like, they don't really mention her too much, other than offhandedly saying that she sings for them, right? That's their record label. But once they do the whole assassination thing, they immediately start talking about her, like she is the new Bruce Lee. Like, we're like, hey, oh, is she going to fall in line? Oh, I don't know. She might be a tough idealist. Well, we'll try and scare her. And I'm like, okay, to do what?
All right, so during that newspaper man scene, during that scene where they're talking to the guy, he specifically brings up, he says, like, and that's where the problems start. He mentions a previous person, someone else who was like a fighter or something.
Yeah, and he's the actor who was in both Fist of Fury and Big Boss.
Yep, and so he is actually fighting against Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And they say, yeah, he was brought up one day for a little talk, and then they do a whole fight scene.
It's all flashback.
All flashback.
If I was to guess, I would say this is original footage from the first time.
Well, it's because Kareem didn't come back for a reshoot, so it's definitely original from that first part. But they said, yeah, it's he went up for a talk, and he got the crap kicked out of him, supposedly killed, and no one ever saw him again. And so, again, we get the implications of you have to listen or else you're killed, so be it. But never once do they say, what did they want from Charlie? What did they want him to do? Like, it's not enough to just say your bad guys are evil and therefore you shouldn't be with them. There needs to be some specific action that is making them evil outside of they kill people.
Which, I mean, that's kind of the problem with this movie, is that it's not really an artistic movie. It's a movie about how do we form something around footage that does not connect to anything. So we have, it's more of it's more like something you would give to like a film student, say, hey, you've got this 11 minutes, fit something around it and make it work. It's an exercise.
My film class that I took back in high school, our final project was, this is a collection of the teacher's vacation, like footage, like things he took on vacation. cut it into something that looks like a trailer or something like that. And everyone did it differently, but that's what this is. You have this amount of footage, and then the only added thing is that they are allowed to film extra stuff, but you had to include that amount of footage to begin with.
That's I feel like that could be very unfair. If the teacher accidentally puts in like a private folder of footage, that could be a very dodgy day in class. Like,
yeah. Strangely enough, I got to use that 70s funk music. The rock, chicka, bow, chicka, boca, chicka.
Sir, what's this folder labeled Glory Hole?
Why are you on the wrong side of it? What?
Hey, no shame here. No shaming.
Yeah.
You can be at any side of the glory hole you want.
It's more about the wife and kids that I know that he had.
Well, in that case, there's no right side.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Unless it's a private one, just for him and the wife.
Oh, yeah. Everyone knows you buy a house, it's got to have indoor heating, it's got to have a good sewage system, it's got to have a glory hole.
Hey, look, lots of people install stripper poles. It's not that weird to think that some people put in a little divider with a hole in it just so they can do some glorying when they're in the mood.
You know, can we just keep talking about this instead of Bruce Lee's movie?
The Hole of Glory. Oh, that should be a movie title. Anyway,
I'm checking if it is.
That last Indiana Jones game should have been called that, because they called it Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. It should have been Indiana Jones and the Hole of Glory.
Glory, yeah. All right, incognito tab open.
It's not protected.
Hole of Glory, IMDb. Nope. There's a bunch of movies called Glory Hole, but no Hole of Glory.
Yes, but are any of them not porn? That'd be impressed if there's one in there that's not a porn movie.
There's a couple that are TV episodes, so those would at least count.
Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
All right. Anyway, back to Game of Death.
Of course. I don't even know where we were at. I assume Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Oh yeah, we're just talking about the villains doing the same thing over and over again. Mm-hmm. I suppose we should mention as well that when he's attacked at one point, the bikers, like one of them's wearing the yellow and black, and there's also other bikers that are wearing the opposite, where they've got a black with a yellow stripe. Yeah,
that's what threw me off. Is that, you know, all the posters, everything I know about Bruce Lee, I know he's getting into that yellow and black outfit. So be it. But the fact that there are 3 other bikers, 2 of which are in the black and yellow, and one of which is in like a green and blue or something like that.
I thought it was green and white stripe, but yeah.
Maybe it was. I don't know. It was definitely green was the first primary color. That's what threw me off. Was I was like, oh, I just assumed that either it was a one and done or it was like Power Rangers rules where all of them are different colors. It's so weird that 2 of them are the same and then 2 of them are different.
That does feel a little bit odd, but I mean, I did... Like, there's this weird thing where I saw the yellow and black one and went, oh, he's getting in that later. I don't know how he's getting in it, but he's getting in it.
Yep.
So, so we have to talk about how they kill him, right? This is, you know, the awkward thing because of how his son ended up dying. Is basically, they decide to shoot him while he is being fake shot in the movie scene that he is shooting. So... They actually use footage from the end of Fist of Fury where they're basically saying they're shooting that scene where he's running towards the camera, the firing squad, and they've got a bunch of people with guns with blanks. Although, I would like to point out here that technically, if this is the shot that you're getting, you don't actually have to have anyone firing anything because you can't see them on screen.
Look. He's a method actor. He requires someone to actually have a gun trained on him.
Oh, but let's just assume, okay, they're getting a shot of the gunman as well. Even though I don't know why you do it in the same shooting
makes
day.
No sense.
Or not day, but you know what I mean, like the same time, right? Mm-hmm. But one of the bad guys, Sticks, the one with the matchstick, swaps out his little blank with a real bullet. So the idea is that, you know, no one will suspect the thing, and the girlfriend's even here to witness it happen. This big triumphant moment. Oh no, something's wrong. He's been shot. And it all plays out. Now, of course, this mirroring, sadly, what happened to his son later in life is very eerie because, you know, he died with it was like a... I reminded myself of this just for the details before we started, but it's actually quite complex from the sense of, like, you have to know a lot about, like, different types of fake ways to fire a gun, because some look good for the muzzle flash and the sound, some look good for seeing like cartridges come out, and it's different kind of things. And it sounded like the gun wasn't like prepared properly after one type of fake bullet, so then the blank was able to
Right.
it basically, like, it was improper care of the weapons, and an actual projectile did shoot Brandon Lee in the filming of a scene. That is ultimately what it boils down to. So their method of killing him in this movie is so eerie in hindsight because of that. It's really weird.
Yeah. It's I mean, on top of it, it's the same sort of thing that I felt like at the original, at the start of the movie, where they started showing the end of Way of Dragon, where we start seeing the end of Fist of Fury here, and it's not even, it's one of those things where it feels like a prequel movie, like right at the end of the prequel movie, where they start making tiny little links, and like the more familiar you are with the original, the easier it is to make the links. So the first shot that we see is the firing squad. It cuts to them doing the shot, and then they say cut. And then it zooms out slightly, and you see like the gate, and you see the rest of like the flooring as well. And that's where in my mind it clicked. I was like, holy crap, we're about to reuse the ending of Fist of Fury. We're about to do that, just straight up. And then, yeah, like the whole movie, the whole scene plays out. And it's just, up until the funeral, this is where I thought it was as skeevy as it was going to get. The idea of Bruce Lee died. The actor is dead. And so they're going to also kill the actor, not actually, obviously, but like, wound him in this way. And then, like, all that's bad enough. But then add on top of it the stuff they couldn't know with Brandon Lee. And this entire sequence just, it gave me like uncomfortable goosebumps.
Yeah.
Of just, oh, none of this is good. Everything about this sequence is bad, and I just want it to end.
Yeah, some of it is their fault, some of it is something they couldn't have predicted, but all of it adds up to, oh, this feels off, this feels bad.
Yeah.
And basically, even though he survives in the hospital, his face all covered in bandages now, so, oh, hey, we're hiding his face even easier now than we did before with the sunglasses and shadow.
Which, again, this is where it starts to feel like, to me, where it's a writing project, where it's like, okay, how do we make it so that the parts where we have to show his face, it doesn't look like him anymore? Give us some ideas here. And someone just raised their hands and says, reconstructive surgery? And they say, you're going to work on a John Woo film later.
That's a Face-Off reference for anyone who didn't get it. So basically, he tells his reporter friend to talk amongst them, because there was a whole bit before the accident where he wanted his girlfriend to run away. He thought, oh, if they're going to keep coming after me, I want her gone. But she refused to leave. So he decides, hey, they think I'm dead. Let's keep it that way. Let's have a funeral. Let's do all this stuff. And don't even tell the girlfriend. Let her even think I'm dead. And she's like distraught. She even collapses at the funeral and goes to like a rehab center.
Yeah, she's at a psych facility because of how distraught she is. And she is unable to just be around people anymore.
Yeah, so this is where you get the funeral footage. And a lot of it is just new footage they've shot for the movie. But there is those one or two shots that are real stuff. And it's kind of skeevy. The big thing for me here after this, though, because we've already talked about, this being ethically dodgy, is we skip ahead a little bit of time, right? And they talk about how Bruce Lee is about to have his new face, but he's going to be in disguise a lot, right? He's given himself a fake beard and stuff so he can get into places without being seen, so on and so on. Which I guess makes sense in the context of the world, because even if his face looks different, he was famous, so I guess disguising still makes some sense, but whatever.
It makes enough sense for what the movie requires it to be, but like, you give it any sort of critical thought, especially as we hit the end and we realize, oh, never mind, he looks exactly the same in the climax. Like, this entire middle section doesn't really work at all.
Well, it doesn't work at all because they use real Bruce Lee footage early on. See, if they didn't do that, if they just said this is what he looked like before the surgery was not Bruce Lee, and then the plot was he gets surgery, and then when the bandages finally come off, he's Bruce Lee, I'd be like, okay, it's definitely, it's hokey, it's silly, but it would make some sense.
I would need them to change a little bit of dialogue, though, where it's like, I think it's the doctor talking to the newspaper guy is like, well, we'll have to do reconstruction. He won't be pretty, but he'll be okay. He'll be presentable. It's like, yeah, no, he looks like Bruce Lee. What a crime.
Yeah. There's actually one point later on where he's putting like makeup over his scar, and he's got sunglasses on and he's leaning into the mirror, and it reminded me a lot of the scene in the Terminator when Arnold's like fixing his face and he's sort of leaning in with the sunglasses, and I'm like, obviously that came later, and I don't think it's inspired by this. It was just the simple act of him leaning in and us pretending that it's still Bruce Lee Just
Right.
made me think of that scene. But
Yeah.
so the girlfriend is in the psych rehab facility, whatever. The newspaper man goes to speak to her, and he knows that he's really alive, but he's keeping it a secret. So he's just kind of trying to like check up on her, make her feel better, whatever. And she's convinced that he was murdered. Blah 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 blah. So on and so on. The villains, right? So Kane, the old man that's in charge, and Matchsticks or Sticks, whatever.
Yes.
Right. They're in a limo and they're talking about, hey, so this girl, is she going to be a problem? Like, does she know things that could be a problem? Like, could we keep her in line because she's got a good... It's a shame we already had to get rid of that actor that was making us a lot of money. We don't want to get rid of this singer too. Like, let's go and just see her, see how she is. And, they show up at the place. As soon as she sees them, she kind of like, goes cold and says, what the hell do you want? And she, because obviously in her head, like, even if she can't prove it right now, she's assuming that these people are responsible for the death of Bruce Lee's character. So,
well, she recognizes one of the guys was around on the set.
Well, she does, but she doesn't recognize that at first. She sort of notices him halfway through the scene and gets even more agitated. But even at first, when she sees Kane, she knows that, hey, most likely whoever's behind this, it's you guys, because you're the guys that have been chasing after him and almost chased me out of town, so on and so on. And she gets more hysterical as the scene goes on, and she yells to them to leave. You'll get lost, you assholes. I hate you. Blah blah blah. Whatever she says. And the old man's trying to do that, like, I'm evil, but I'm going to act nice the whole time. Like, hey, calm down, young lady. Like, we can all be civil and adults about this. And when she eventually yells enough that they just leave, it cuts to them back in the limo, and the old man goes, what a bitch. I'm like, excuse me, you murdered her boyfriend as far as you know right now, and she yelling at you is out of line? I mean, I guess, honestly, this is the most villainous moment he's had the whole movie, because it's the one thing that I've seen him actually do that's just a villain thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, up until this point, they keep on talking about, like, oh, we got to fix these games, we got to do this, we got to do that. But this is the first point where it felt like it was just him being mean. But the fact that he gets into the car and just calls her a bitch, it feels like he doesn't even know that he's doing it. It feels like he's just like, what? I was going in there trying to be nice to her, and she called me an asshole. What did I do wrong here? As if killing the boyfriend was just part of doing business.
So out of line. How disrespectful. She should respect the old mob boss for...
Absolutely. What happened to respecting your elders?
Yeah, so Bruce Lee's side of this is he puts on a fake beard and tries to get into the bad guy's mansion and gets into a fight scene where, again, he loses and gets chased off. Yeah, on you go.
Real quick. His plan, the way that we know as an audience that this is supposed to be Bruce Lee in a beard, is he takes one of his headshots and a magic marker and scribbles a beard on it and says, this will be my new look.
It is a problem because they're basically acknowledging there that the audience wouldn't know it's supposed to be him if they don't specifically tell us an explanation, as exposition show us that it's going to be him. And the fight scenes, it's what he kicks a lot, sure, but it doesn't have the energy or the panache of actual Bruce Lee.
Well, they get to the island, and this is here. The boss is meeting up with these investors that have a lot of money. It's been throughout the movie, but honestly, it doesn't matter at all. On the island.
Is that? I guess he does take a boat, but I assumed it was just sort of going up the coast. But I mean, maybe it is an island.
I mean, maybe it is. Yeah. But regardless, he sneaks up on the head boss guy, and the head boss has no idea who this is. He doesn't know why this strange bearded man is coming up.
He thinks this crazy homeless man's just snuck into his garden and is trying to strangle him. And that's the thing. Yeah. He is just trying to strangle him. It's not until his henchmen show up that he ends up getting into more of a fight and ultimately gets sort of defeated. And afterwards, Styx is like, something seemed very familiar about that guy.
My favorite bit, though, is that he comes up and just tries to strangle him. And that's silent. That's quiet. He's just... But then as the thugs come up and as everyone starts attacking him, we get the classic Bruce Lee, high-pitched, hee-haws sort of things in there. Yes. And all I could think is, really? You didn't recognize that bit from the world-famous actor, even in the context of your own movie? You didn't recognize his very signature cry?
Look, they're not the brightest villains in the world, okay?
That's true.
They're just simply not. And then the second thing, which kind of intersects back with the girlfriend, because the girlfriend by this point is out, right? And she's basically decided she wants revenge herself. So she has bought herself a gun, and whilst at the tournament that these bad guys are putting on, there's a crowd, and we spend far too much time watching this fight in the ring.
Obviously they wrote this new bit. Like, we got to the tournament because of what the new bit was. But this felt like they were contractually obligated of just like, we spent this much money on the tournament, god damn it, we're going to use it. But like, there was no need for this. There was no need to spend a good 10 minutes on this, except for the fact of we haven't gotten any just kung fu on kung fu one-on-one for about 40 minutes of this movie now.
Yeah, that's all it felt like. Admittedly, most of it's after her bit, but I just wanted to mention we spend far too much time watching just this fight play out. But she actually is just going to walk up and like shoot the bad guys in the face. She's got her gun in her purse. She's walking up. But Bruce Lee's in disguise. He's there. He sees her going there.
Oh, clearly he still is the same black-bearded, like Bruce Lee age man as before, because we have already established that that's the look he's sticking with, right?
No. See, the villains would recognize that now because they've seen him in the beard. So now he's an old man with the old wise, like, monk martial artist hair.
The Fu Manchu.
Yes. Quite a makeup job, this one in particular. And but he grabs her hand as she's about to pull out the gun, and she's not looking at him yet, so he just whispers in her ear, don't do it. What needs to happen is happening. And just walks off, and she's like, Billy? Like, she recognizes his voice. She's like, so was that my dead boyfriend? So that stops her in her tracks. And then we watch 5 full minutes of this stupid fight in the ring, which is really just all set up for the fact that, okay, the white guy in the ring who works for the bad guys, he's one of the henchmen, and he wins. They all cheer for him. When he goes back to the locker room, Bruce Lee sneaks into the locker, and we get a one-on-one fight where he kills this guy in the locker room. So this guy's just won the world championship, and then Bruce Lee takes him out. That's kind of what they've went for here. And there's a lot of Fist of Fury shots, like sort of interspliced into this one whenever Bruce Lee's got a close up doing his face or whatever. And somehow he's able to, after this loud fight scene where eventually the people having a party, because this guy won on the other side of the door, eventually start to hear some thuds and like, wait a minute, I think our man might be in trouble in there. Something's going on.
Yeah, something's happening. There's 2 things I need to mention about this scene. The first is, you say there's the Fist of Fury cutscene. There are.
Yes.
But there's one that in particular just drove me up the wall, which was, it's like a half-second shot. You would barely even notice it, except for this is a locker room. There are lockers and showers and all of this stuff. And the shot they decided to use of Bruce Lee getting hit in the face has like golden tiled wallpaper behind him, so bright and ornamental looking. And I'm like, really? There wasn't any other shot of Bruce Lee you could have used, even zoomed in a bit more, that wouldn't have shown such a bright and colorful location in this dingy ass locker room. And then the second thing with this is, I don't get it. Like, it seems like they're almost playing this as somewhat of a humorous bit, the fact that the party's going on outside, but then they just can't get into the room. I think that a little bit of a retooling of this scene would have made it work a little better for me, where instead of it being the door is locked and nobody can get in, just before this sequence, we get introduced to this young blonde woman who is hitting on the white guy who won the fight. Have them both go into the locker room. Have it be implied that they are about to get hanky-panky in there. Bruce Lee shows up, scares the woman away, but then the people outside the room think that all of the grunting noises and stuff going on is just that happening. And it makes this sequence work a lot better, in my opinion.
When they eventually get in at the end of the scene, Bruce Lee has Batmaned out of it. He's just gone. He's vanished like a whisper in the wind. And the bad guys are now all over the place because, like, wait, this is impossible. Like, how did, like, the only person that anyone saw around was some old guy. Like, how did this happen? And eventually, and to be fair, it's not that long before the old man's like, now you're sure he died, right? That Bruce Lee's character died. And Ken's like, well, I did see the body. Where is he buried? I'll go dig him up. We'll go have a check, right? And that's where we get the whole, there's like a porcelain like head in there that he smashes.
So I believe that this sequence, it's not a long sequence, but this sequence is the movie in one scene. of, am I really going to disrespect this grave for the sake of money? You bet I am.
Yep. Yeah, they dig up the grave. It's a porcelain doll. He smashes it with his cane. And it's like, okay, they know he's alive now, but now they have to find him. Where could he possibly be? He's hunting them out. He's like a vigilante right now. He's coming after them.
And again, from the viewpoint of the storyline, Bruce Lee's plan was nobody can know I'm alive, except for Newspaper Man. You're allowed to know because I still need that one connection to help me out. In about 20 minutes after that happened, everyone now knows he's alive.
Yes.
So they really worked that whole faked your death angle to the ground, didn't they?
Well, yeah, because the wire tapped the newspaper guy's phone like right after this and end up like hearing whatever. And I don't even remember how the girlfriend gets kidnapped, but she gets kidnapped.
Bruce Lee calls the newspaper man and says, hey, have her meet me somewhere. And that's before he reveals about the wiretap. They
have an emotional, like, sort of one-on-one kind of thing. Again, in shadows, because he has to hide his face because it's not Bruce Lee.
He's like, I wanted you to get out of here. I have to finish this. And she's like, no, we can run away. We cannot do this. And he's like, no, I really got to do this. Also, get out of the movie. We're done with you now.
Oh, not quite yet, because she does get kidnapped. And I'm, you know what? I'm upset I forgot about this because I actually really liked how she gets grabbed. One of the bikers in the tracksuits just rides up beside her and just grabs the back of her head and starts like dragging her on the ground. It actually was a pretty nice looking little stunt. Like, obviously, I'm sure it's a stunt woman who's doing this bit because it's from the back. But I thought it looked like a good little thing on its own. I mean, but hey, whatever.
Yeah, and then the bad guys talk to Newspaper Man. They say, hey, we kidnapped the girlfriend. Tell Bruce Lee to meet us up in a warehouse.
Yes, which basically leads us to our third act, which consists of extended sequence in the warehouse where Bruce Lee saves the girl and takes on all the bikers, right? And there's a lot of like jumping out and kicking him in the face. This is where he steals the yellow tracksuit. And there's a lot of bike stuff. There's a lot of going up ramps, going into boxes, going into whatever like cans of paint are in the background. There's just a lot of that going on. And it's okay. It's not great. It's just fine.
I think the warehouse scene as a whole didn't work for me. There were a few okay moments, but for the most part, I was less than interested. What worked for me in this sequence was eventually we get the last one out in the rain. And I felt like the cinematography, especially here, even if the choreography wasn't great, the cinematography for him like beating this guy for the information of like, where is your boss? Tell me where he is now. That really worked for me.
Yeah, this was Sticks. So the end of this warehouse bit is Sticks he's beaten up. So he gets his for trying to kill him earlier. And of course, he rides in the motorbike with the helmet on to the restaurant where the bad guys' like headquarters are, and
which turns out to be like 5 stories tall, I guess.
Yeah, well, admittedly, this was meant to be a tower in the original movie, but of course, as soon as he comes inside, it's Bruce Lee, right? It's him. He's here, and there was that little moment of doubt where I saw him and went, "Wait, was that really Bruce?" I need a close up. I need a close up. It's him. It's him. We're at the real footage. Yes.
Well. The part that got me, the part that I knew we were transitioning into the real footage here is as our stand-in is walking up the stairs, he looks over to a wall and sees a couple of weapons there, and he grabs them in a very specific fashion, and then we transition to Bruce Lee, who's holding those weapons, and it's like, okay, this was your last little we have to connect the dots moment. Like your tiniest little thing of he walked into the scene holding some weapons, so we're just going to have him pick them up literally the moment before we cut to the real footage.
Yeah, and having various types of weapon hanging on a wall, especially for a villainous person, isn't that weird. I did think it's weird because he picks up like this green stick thing, which is like it's almost like a pointer, basically.
It's some sort of cane, I guess.
Yeah, but he picks something else up, which turns out to be nunchucks, but they're in like a bag, like a little black holding bag. And I was like, it's weird you would if you're going to hang nunchucks on the wall for decoration, you'd think you just have the nunchucks like on display.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I could see based off of what the original story was, I can see exactly how this was supposed to be. Like this was 100% supposed to be. This is what he's brought from home in order to go through this tower, and he was just carrying it as he walked in.
Yeah, and he walks in, and Kareem Hakim is his character's name.
No, the first one is the red nunchucks guy.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh no, wait. Actually, Hakim was last. Sorry, I'm mixing
that's
things
what
up.
I'm saying.
Hakeem was last. But he was the most notable because we saw him earlier in the movie, so he's the one that stuck out to me the most.
Yeah, these two are definitely people that we haven't seen before. Though there is this guy who we start out with has a red bandana. That's kind of his defining feature. Is he's got a red bandana.
Yeah, because the second guy's in a white karate style suit.
Yep, with like a gold belt.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first guy, we did see someone much earlier on in the movie put on a red bandana, and I think they're supposed to be implied to be the same people, but they're very obviously separated by the whole movie.
I never got that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Bruce Lee, like, in this footage, does not have any dialogue. I don't believe. Nope. It's
not
all
a single word.
It's all fine. But the second he starts, like, sort of standing there ready for the fight, and he sort of moves his legs around, and he throws a smile, it's like, oh, all of a sudden there's, like, personality. All of a sudden there's charisma. I'm ready for this. And
he has such a bounce in his step. He's, like, ready to go. It is everything that I wanted from this that the first guy just wasn't delivering.
Yeah. And it's, like, I can't really fault the guy. Like, it's, like, Bruce Lee was kind of a once-in-a-lifetime kind of dude. Like, it's not really fair for anyone to have to try and live up to that. But
I'm not asking for him to live up to it, but it felt like someone who's like, hey, guess what? I can do an impersonation of, like, this celebrity. And then they put on the bare minimum. Like, they hardly changed their voice at all. This kind of is what that, like, you are cast as Bruce Lee. Could you at least try some of the mannerisms? Could you at least try to get some of that working for you?
Yeah. But like, we get 3 fight scenes and they are pretty good. They are, you know, they're full of energy, they're full of life. It does lots of fun things here. When like the other guy, you know, starts flicking around his nunchucks, Bruce Lee pulls out his, which are also color coded. I think there's a yellow, I want to say.
Yep.
Came
with
out the
black
back.
stripe down the side.
No, there's no black stripe, but I see what you did there. But
no, they do. They have a black stripe on them. I'm not kidding.
Oh, I never noticed.
Yeah.
But he does, like, it's just little things, like a bit where he goes to flick his nunchucks but doesn't, and instead just kicks the guy in the shin. Just little things like that just make it so much fun to watch. Just little subversions of expectation, which works against the opponent, but also for us, the audience. It's just really entertaining stuff. Like you say, they kind of get bigger, and, like, you know, when you end with Hakeem, the big tall guy, it's like, oh, this feels like a tougher opponent, kind of thing.
Because everyone else he's managed to be on pretty equal footing with off the bat, but when it gets to Hakeem, whatever, like, Kareem just lifts up his foot and kicks him in the chest from like 5 feet away because his legs are just that long. Yeah, and you see this imprint.
Yeah, footprint on his on his yellow jumpsuit.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that the size difference was impressive here. It made for a different type of fight scene. This one's got a little bit more of, like, going through tables and that kind of stuff going on for it. And it's so sad when you get to the end of this one, though, and, like, Kane comes down the stairs, because that's when we've transitioned to the new footage, or again, because it's like, oh, we're back to this guy who's not Bruce Lee. That's it, it's over. Like, the whole movie, the one little carrot on, like, in front of me was, oh, but we're going to get to some Bruce Lee footage. And then you get to the end of this segment and you're like, oh no, that's it. Like, there's no more. We have to end the movie with the new guy. This is upsetting.
Yeah. So just to stick on those 3 scenes, though, and it continues on past that point, but my only criticism with the fight scenes of original footage is the music that was played over top.
Sure. I mean, this is a theme that's played throughout the movie, though. So this is not on the original movie's, like, plans. No. This is whatever they did for this that's added this.
And it's a good score. It is a nice track, but it is looping with no interruptions the entire time. And it's probably a good 30-second long track. So you hear it at least 6 times over the course of this whole thing. And it's just, it gets a bit grating after a while, and there's no variation to it. Like, when he's kicking the ass of the second guy, the guy with the golden belt, it's that music. When he's getting his ass kicked by Hakeem, it's that same music. There's no feeling of the music is, like, emotionally guiding you. It's just a solid score throughout.
Yeah. And it's not to say that there's no fun, but, like, I mean, him taking out Kane's kind of whatever, to be honest. I didn't really feel much from that.
It was absolutely just, oh, we got to give him his.
Yeah, but I did kind of like at least the idea a little bit of, like, the old man's. They actually thought of something kind of fun to do here, where Bruce Lee goes up to, well, I say Bruce Lee, the man impersonating Bruce Lee.
Yes,
runs
Billy
up
Lowe
to like the boss's office, and he goes in, and it seems like the old man's killed himself before he can get to him, and it's like, whoa, that's kind of a ballsy thing for your villain to do.
This is actually Bruce Lee. Like, they do actually use reaction shots of actual Bruce Lee here. Obviously, he's not looking at that exact thing, but the reaction shots are all actually him.
Sure, yeah, but it's not necessarily footage that he shot for this movie, necessarily.
No, it was. He was wearing the jumpsuit, yeah.
Okay, all right. But they've repurposed them from whatever the scenes
it's from
were.
something else, but at the very least, it's still him.
Okay, yeah, but it still feels as out of place as the other shots they've inserted. It just happens to be footage that was shot for Game of Death.
Yeah, well, they make it immediately worse because, you know, he's looking at the body. He's like seeing the blood pooling around the wrists and all that. And it's actual Bruce Lee footage. And then Bruce runs out of camera. New guy enters into camera behind the bad guy, just rips off his head and yells the word wax, and then throws it aside. And I'm like, that's a cartoon moment. You just made this a cartoon.
Yeah, the head smashes because it's fake. So they've tried to fake... The bad guy's tried to fake his own death as well. And we see that he's actually watching from the other side of a one-way mirror on the other side. And he's got like a fake door, almost like the where the door is in Enter the Dragon, actually. And Bruce Lee basically just looks over at it. He kind of like senses it. So he just, on a leap of faith, runs and jump kicks through this window or this mirror to get onto the other side. So I mean, it's a cool idea for a moment, and he gets to the bad guy, and the movie ends as quickly as it possibly can, because once this bad guy gets thrown off the building, it just goes to credits. We're not going to do any epilogue.
Dude, he chases him down a ladder. Like, Bruce Lee's just reaching for the guy. Doesn't even get a hand on him. The dude loses his footing, falls down through some neon signs, and the moment he hits the ground, the moment we cut to his dead body, all right, starring Bruce Lee, directed by, like, it is over in a second.
Yeah, although I will say, I did think the way he bounced off some neon signs on the way down did at least look kind of cool. I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting thing, is to just sort of go down the side of a neon sign as you're falling to your death.
I think visually it works, but it is so quick that it just doesn't feel like the same level of being earned as some of the other characters. Like, I think out of all the characters, the one who got the most punishment here was Styx. He was the one who got fully beat up and was left for dead out in the rain. Everyone else is just kind of, all right, I guess that happened.
Yep, pretty much.
Yep.
So,
and then the ending credits are just all of his previous movies.
Yeah, just clips.
Edited up. Yep.
Which is fine. Like, the whole point of this, at least what they would say it is this is a whole meant to be a tribute to Bruce Lee. It's a homage to Bruce Lee. So you end with like a nice montage of all of his big moments. That's a fine idea in theory. If only the movie didn't feel so like shameless in the first place, it might have a nice sentiment to it.
One thing, just as we're wrapping up trivia wise, apparently there are 2 alternate endings depending on the cut you get.
Okay.
I believe it's Cantonese cut or the Hong Kong cut, something like that, has him getting arrested because I guess they had something like the Hays Code at that time where if you commit murder or whatever, you have to be showing your character as dealing with the law. So he got arrested at the end of the movie. And then another cut for some other country was him meeting back up with Anne and them going off on their merry way.
Yeah, that's fair. Not that I was super invested in it, but that is what I would have expected as a final scene with her being like, "Oh, it's over now. We can finally, rest and be happy."
Yeah, that's why I felt like she didn't really matter to the plot at all, because we ended this so quickly that, for all we know, she's still just sitting in that warehouse waiting for him to come back.
I mean, he freed her from her restraint, so I assume she sauntered off somewhere.
But he also told her, don't come out of here no matter what happens. So I just imagine he got the information, immediately hopped in a car, and then just left her there.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, it was an interesting one to watch. It's an interesting one to talk about, but not because it's good.
Yeah.
You know, it's a weird concoction of like an exercise in filmmaking and trying to salvage something that arguably shouldn't have been salvaged, even though seeing the original footage is quite interesting in its own. But, you know, like, you could have just presented it as a bonus. Like, admittedly, I get that wasn't really an option back in 1972, 73, whatever. But if this happened now, I would expect this 12 minutes to be, you know, on YouTube or a bonus on the movie's release of something else. Like,
Yeah. Like when Criterion released the box set of
Yes.
Bruce Lee films, it's there.
Yeah, and that's effectively what they did with that. Like, oh, here's just a cut of like only original footage, which I assume, doesn't feel like a full film either. But at least it's not. It doesn't feel shameless. It's like, hey, here's how it is as it is. Maybe with some text cards or something, filling in some gaps and whatever. I don't know.
No. Strangely enough, the Criterion version of it had a bunch of the original footage, and then they showed the entirety of Bruce Lee's funeral with little dollar signs popping up at the bottom, and then they just continued on, not even mentioning it.
Dear. So yeah, definitely a weird end. It's a sad end to Bruce Lee's movies, especially since the original concept. Like we talked about as we were going through them, that it felt like there was lessons being learned from each one. And while there's some stuff that I like more from some of the earlier ones, like Way of the Dragon, it felt like, okay, this leveled up from the previous ones. It's exciting where to go next. Enter the Dragon's kind of a sidestep because this is an American movie and it sort of does some things better, some things worse. The premise of Game of Death sounds like, oh no, this might have been like where Bruce Lee really kind of like, I don't know, became it feels, like the movie that he was always meant to be in, like the movie that he was building up to.
It feels like it could have been like a proto John Wick. It could have just been a movie that is solely dedicated to, let's just see this man perform a peak performance for an hour and a half. And he just does. And it's beautiful.
Yeah. And there's so many things. Like I wouldn't so much compare Die Hard to what that premise is, but certainly something like The Raid or Dread, or not that Dread's martial arts, but it's the idea that you're working your way up a building in an action movie to get to the bad guy. Like that's absolutely kind of the idea, which, it's such a perfect, simple premise for an action movie. And seeing these glimpses of it is so enticing, and it's just a shame you'll never get to see the full thing. And then
I do wonder if the original script is anywhere. I would love to know that.
That would be interesting if it is available, if you could go read it somewhere. Well, it's probably not in English.
I want Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's copy. Show me that.
Oh yeah, yes, that's true. He probably had an English copy. That's quite right. Yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know. Anyway, these are going to be weird categories for this one, but we'll start off. Well, okay, let's just agree before we get it going. Scene of the movies, the original Bruce Lee stuff, right? Like, there's no.
Yeah, if I had to be more specific, I think I would give it to the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar bit.
Sure, it's the most inventive and different of the three parts, but even just that initial moment where he first walks up the stairs and he's bouncing around, and I'm like, oh my god, it's just so good to have him here, because like the rest of this has been kind of dull.
I guess that's really kind of how you look at it, is this entire movie is just the promise of, we're going to keep edging you, and then trust me, it'll pay off. And then by the time you see Bruce Lee, like the first shot as he gets to the top of the stairs, he looks over, he sees Red Bandana Man, and he just kind of like, like he just like lays back on one leg a little bit, shifts his weight, and just like immediately the charisma is just off the charts. It is just immediately like, this is the man you came to see, and it is absolutely everything we were hoping it would.
Yep. So, VIP?
Yeah, this one's tougher.
I'm gonna get. I still Bruce, I think, because like, I mean, yes. Who else would you want to give it to?
All right. So if I'm honestly debating here as to performances, just not even saying importance to the movie, but just quality of performance, I think that the girlfriend, Colleen Camp, she delivered. I think everyone else in this movie is kind of B tier or lower, but I think that she got emotional where she needed to get emotional. It didn't feel like she was hammy. It felt like she was actually properly acting the whole way through. And I think she is, out of everyone else in this cast of the new footage, the most qualified and competent. So I at least want to shout her out there. I want to say that she is decent. However, I think that most of the original footage is just kind of sullied, or not the original, the new footage is just sullied by the fact that it is the new footage. It is something that I'm not going to be able to give an attachment to because it's just kind of crap the whole way through. It doesn't really have anything that's feeling like it's really worth it. So when you get to that original footage, it just feels so good. And out of those characters, yeah, it's got to go to Bruce Lee.
Yeah, it's Bruce Lee. I mean, it's the easiest pick. This is the easiest VIP I think I've ever picked. Is Bruce Lee here. So good luck with these. Go on.
Why do you have to introduce this whole goddamn extra shit on Bruce Lee season, knowing that this one was sitting at the end? All right, visuals. I'm going to, unless otherwise noted, be talking about the new footage, not the original. Visuals, not good. It's not like the fact that we are intercutting to so much stock footage, and it is so, especially in the first 20 minutes, not fitting. It is like the backgrounds are wrong, the lighting is wrong. It just is amateur hour at best. It is a horrible, and then the cardboard face cutout immediately deducts 1.5 points just on its own. That's just not good filmmaking. I don't understand why they thought they could get away with that, but money blinds us all. So for visuals, I think ultimately that one's going to be like, I'm going to give it a 4, and I'm going to say that a point of that is original footage. It is the original stuff boosting that up. Sound, it's not much to really say. They don't use a lot of stock audio. It's just kind of all the new stuff. It doesn't do anything to stand out, so I can't say it's anything too high on that, but it's also not awful where I don't feel like I'm following what's going on because of the sound itself. Again, I would critique that one score bit that just repeated incessantly for the original footage, but it's a decent enough piece of score independently. So I think overall that one's probably going to get a 5.5 for me. It just doesn't do anything bad. Acting. Again, I'll say that Anne, the girlfriend, decent. Everyone else, not. Bruce Lee brings the charisma, but it's only relegated to those 11 minutes. And everything else outside of that is just kind of poor to average at best. So the Bruce Lee kind of makes me want to bump it up a little bit, but I think I'm going to stick with a 6. That seems right to me. Just barely squeezing by that, though. Screenplay, writing. So this is where everything falls apart, because there's no way that this could ever get anything possibly higher than like a 3 max. It's as much as I like the ending bit is just fight scenes. You can't say that that's anything written into the screenplay. And if anything, it's kind of more confusing of, oh, he's at this restaurant that happens to have 5 floors that just is all dojos on the top 4 floors, I guess. Like, it doesn't make any sense. The rest of the plot's just as incoherent. I think ultimately screenwriting, it's got to be like 2.5. And the only reason it's getting that much is at least they got creative with how they managed to connect the footage they had. They could have easily thrown all reason out of the way and said, yeah, and he changed into a yellow jumpsuit because that's just what he wanted to wear. Like, at least they did something to connect things. And then production values. It's cheap. It's very cheap. It feels very cheap. It's absolutely cashing in on all of these things. But I think ultimately, I would probably still come down around like 4 or so, just on its own merit. It feels like, yeah, they sunk some money into a couple things. The warehouse scene jumps to mind, but I'm going to deduct a full 3 points from that for daring to use the funeral footage as is. That's just, how dare you? You took the easy way out and it bit you in the ass. So I'm giving production values a 1.0.
Whoa. All right. Visuals. Okay, this is tough because on a general level, when they're just doing normal scenes, the scenes look fine. But when they cut to archive footage, and certainly when we get that cutout in the reflection, it's like laughable. Like, a student film wouldn't be allowed to get away with this. Like, if I had done this when I was like, in university, I would have been probably given a fail for thinking this was okay.
Yeah.
So I think on that level, I think the visuals, because it's so inconsistent, and inconsistency is a problem in and of itself. I cannot go higher than a 2 out of 10 for visuals.
Okay, fair enough.
Audio is fine. I don't have any great complaints. Some of it sounds awkwardly ADR'd, but I mean, given how dubbed a lot of these other movies have been, it's hardly that weird in that context. Music's fine, whatever. So this is a 6 for audio. I have no real big complaints for the audio. For acting, acting is just kind of middle of the road, I think. Like, I think a lot of the new characters aren't great, but I think it's more because of the script for the most part and what they're being told to do than it is necessarily just because the abilities are bad. Obviously, there's a lot of charisma in the original footage, which I'm not really factoring in here too much. Maybe a little bit. But I'm going to go 5 out of 10 for acting. I don't think I would call it particularly bad or particularly good. I think it mainly comes from what I'm getting to next, which is script and story, where we are down somewhere in the realms of like a 3 out of 10, something in that range. Because it's just such a mess, and it's the sort of thing where it was doomed to begin with because the entire purpose of the script was not to tell a compelling story, it was to build a story around footage that we have to pretend somehow fits into something else that it wasn't originally filmed for. And when that's your main goal, if that's like the main thing that you're aiming for the entire time, then that means that you're not making decisions for the best emotional reasons or the best storytelling reasons or the best artistic reasons. You're making decisions based out of, can we just kind of fit it in there and get away with it? And the answer was probably not in a lot of the cases. So 2 out of 10 for script. And then for production value, I mean, the production value is not bad in a general sense, but obviously cutting to stock footage does make it feel cheaper, but obviously it's a weird circumstance in this case. But it is worth mentioning that the original footage, while it's obviously a very limited set of locations, does look more interesting visually than any of the new stuff. So even by comparison, it feels like a little bit. So you went really low on this because you kind of you sort of included the footage of the funeral, and I guess I understand why you did here.
If we're counting stock footage in there, it's stock footage. Like that's what it is.
I don't know if this is the category I would count that in per se. I mean, usually I would. Stock footage would normally definitely be part of like production value. This is like a really weird case though, where that's not why they're using stock footage. Like,
no, absolutely. But like, I think back to what I know, which admittedly isn't a lot, of like Ed Wood, where like he would throw in stock footage just for the sake of, well, I got it, may as well use it. Like,
sure.
In that instance, I understand the production value being cheap, but that's what the funeral scene is. Like, they didn't need to do that. They could have filmed a fake funeral scene, but they chose to do it.
You're right. Admittedly, I don't think they did it to save money, though. I think they did it for basically like saying, hey, that's an extra shot of Bruce Lee. Like, I think they did it for more morally corrupt reasons than it was. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure they love saving some money. Don't get me wrong. They love their money, so why wouldn't they? But yeah, I think you gave it like a 1.5. I think I'm going to go with the 3. I don't think I can go quite as... Like, and, we just watched a Neil Breen film for extra reels in the last week and a half, so I can't, like, I know what a 1 out of 10 in production value looks like.
Again, like I said, I'm giving it a 4 in terms of, like, what I actually think. For moral reasons, I'm giving it a 1. Okay.
Now, most movies don't need it, but if there was an extra category here, which was ethical score out of 10, you can... fly. Then again, that shouldn't really be a score out of 10. That should just be, is it ethical or is it not? It should be a simple yes or no. The answer is, in this case, pretty hard no.
Anything where you're cashing in on the death of a dead actor, that's a no. Anything that puts Snyder into a job, that's a no. That's pretty much my 2 categories so far. I'll come up with more.
That's Zack Snyder, I assume, for the record. Yes.
Yes, okay. Absolutely.
Just checking. So, with that in mind, what is your final score for Game of Death?
We've been bouncing around 7 and 7.5s this whole season, and it almost feels bad for this to be such a blemish, such a a downgrade in quality right here at the end. Obviously, it's not in Bruce Lee's control. It's not in really anybody's control except for the people who decided this movie has to be made. We are going to use this footage, like it or not. And ultimately, I don't think that I can really give it anywhere close to the 7.
Well, obviously. Like, it'd be crazy if you tried.
I'm trying to think whether it's like even above a 5, if I'm being honest. Because, like, it's not... If it weren't for the fact that I knew that it was Bruce Lee after the death, I'm trying to think about whether or not technically it works still in any regard. And I think for a lot of it, it does. But once you cut to those other pieces of footage, once you try to intersplice those reaction shots throughout, that's really where the cheapness starts to show, because those feel so out of place. They feel so completely different from everything else going on.
I think back to one of the first things we talked about when we got into the plot of the movie is we spent a good few minutes complaining that we never really understood what the villains actually wanted.
That's true.
That is just a major flaw, regardless of what they're doing with stock footage or original movie footage.
Yeah. I mean, on some level, I'm willing to accept, okay, the villains are evil because they're evil, but it's just because it kept reoccurring in this one. It is just a script writing problem. Ultimately, being brief about it, I think that this one just doesn't crack the mark for me. It's so incredibly close to a 5, mainly because of the original footage being there at the end. It's very good footage, but I think I'm still going to keep this one at like a 4.5, just under the mark.
Oh yeah, I don't think there was a question or a doubt in my mind that this was under a 5 for me. Just because, regardless of how good that original footage is, and I am glad that in some way there is something that packages it for me to see that original footage, but the rest of the movie is not good.
Right.
And it feels ethically in a dodgy place for periods of it as well. So, for me, I think I'll go with a flat 4.
Okay.
It's interesting to see that original footage, but I think you have to go into this with the frame of mind that this is not a real finished movie. It is a weird project that just exists to present you 12 minutes of Bruce Lee scenes that didn't get to be finished.
Yep.
And if you look at it as that, then you can get some enjoyment out of it. But you do have to overlook some really dodgy stuff throughout to get there.
Yeah. I mean, once you get to the part where he says, like, oh, he gets shot more or less, or even just before that, you could just fast forward by like 30 minutes. You're not going to miss anything.
Yeah, you've got the motivation for why he wants to go after the bad guys. You can just skip to when he's going after the bad guys at that point.
Absolutely.
And even before that, it's pretty repetitive. So, I mean,
you need to watch the scene where, unfortunately, you have to see the cardboard face in the mirror, because that's where we get the initial motivation. Fast forward to them shooting him on the set. That needs to happen. And then fast forward to him rescuing his girlfriend.
Yeah, the warehouse. And then
that's about it. That's all you need.
And then all the fight scenes of the real footage afterwards. And there you go. 35 minutes long.
If even. Yeah. We do have to decide, does this make the cut?
No, of course it doesn't make the cut, you idiot.
But there's 3 different levels of that. So where are we falling?
Okay. So it can either just be not make the cut. It can be
cut your losses.
Cut your losses.
Or pretty bad.
Or it can be it cuts deep, like the mob boss at the end tried to do. Yes. I think it's cut your losses.
Yeah, that's where I'm feeling. It doesn't feel like, worst things ever made. It doesn't feel painful throughout. It's just cringy in a lot of places.
Yeah,
but it's definitely it's that cringiness does translate somehow. So it's not just a basic cut from the collection either.
Yeah. So cut your losses. It goes into that category. And I don't know how many of those we've had recently on Collector's Cut. It's been a while.
The ending of Die Hard season.
That went lower than that, though, did it not?
Oh, yeah, it was cut your losses and then it cuts deep.
Yeah, it cuts deep was the 5th one. Yeah. I was going to say, that 5th one is lower than this.
Yep.
Which is really saying something about Die Hard 5.
Yep.
Oh, dear. Yeah, go back and check out Die Hard season if you haven't seen that already, folks. Now, before I tell you about all the ways you can get bonus content and supporters and all that, I should probably say, hey, what's coming next? Because that is the end of a season. So there will be a week off with no episode, as there always is between seasons. But when we return on the 12th of April, we'll be starting off Mission Impossible season.
Oh, boy.
Working all the way up over 8 weeks to the release of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, which is the 8th one, just for anyone who hasn't kept count of these.
Yes.
So, yeah, so this big block of a franchise there, kind of fun to go through one. I mean, we did The Airport and Die Hard back to back, so it's not like we've not done franchise in a while, but this is a big beefy one that's been kind of lingering, because we almost did it last year, thinking that the new one was coming out and then it got delayed a year. So we've been waiting to do Mission Impossible for a while, so we finally get to start that off, and hopefully, there'll be ups, there'll be downs.
They'll be dangling on a wire. They'll be climbing up buildings.
Very good, yes.
That's all I know about Mission Impossible.
So, have you not seen any of them?
Nope.
Oh, that's interesting. That's fun.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get all your first time reactions then, and I will be revisiting them all one way or another.
Do I need to watch the original 60 series to know what's going on?
No, you do not. In fact, okay. I have never seen the original 60 series, and I believe it would probably just confuse me if I tried to at this point. Like, where is Tom Cruise? Why is he not running from something? This doesn't make sense.
Why is Tom Cruise just standing there not running from something? That's all I know him for.
Look forward to that, and of course check out the Atomic Cinema Experiment, our sci-fi movie podcast. It's the same pair of people. It's me and David, and we did some new releases over the last couple of weeks with Mickey 17 and The Electric State, and we've got some 90s movies coming up over the next couple of weeks, like Frequency and Virtuosity, which were both Patreon vote winners. So
yes.
Speaking of Patreon, you can get bonus shows if you want to support this the series and you want to keep this stuff coming. You can support us over at Patreon, and me and David do 2 monthly bonus shows in addition to whatever else you get on there, which include the Criterion Cut, where we review movies from the Criterion Collection, and Extra Reels, where we review some of the worst things ever made. As I previously mentioned, we did a Neil Breen movie. That's our 4th Neil Breen movie, for the record. We've done 4 of those now.
God, I still don't understand how I've lived through all of that.
But yeah, the back catalogue of Criterion Cut and Extra Reels grows. We've been doing them for a couple of years now, so they're both, nice and well into their 20s in terms of episode count. Yep. So,
if you want a sampling, there's 3 episodes of both shows on somewhere on the channel.
Yeah, there's one free Extra Reels episode, which was sort of done as a bonus thing, and the first 6 episodes of Criterion Cut are available on YouTube for free. But if you want those and help support all the content and keep Collector's Cut coming as well as everything else, then you can do that over at Patreon. Or if you prefer, for some reason, you can also do YouTube membership, and most of that bonus content is made available there as well. So that is us. That is the show, everyone. I just hit my mic. Thank you very much for joining. I do appreciate it. Keep watching movies, and if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.